afternoon. Welcome to our last session of the day. This session will be a training session for ApproveIT, where we will look at the new features, but also at the whole functionality for ApproveIT and walk through sending a signing request to DocuSign, and also, of course, getting it back in Central. Before we start with this session, as mentioned in our previous session as well, please keep in mind if you deploy our solution to test it properly in a sandbox or test environment before you install it in a live environment to make sure that everything keeps working, especially if you have your own customization or other integrated software that interacts with our solutions. Today we're looking at the release for the Q1 release for 2025, which is available for BC 18 and up. We will go over the new features first, and I'll show you those in a moment in our Business Central environment. First thing we will discuss is the option that we now have introduced to request the hierarchy directly from the setup wizard. Previously, when you downloaded the solution or installed the solution from AppSource, you were sent an email with the license key or trial license key. However, we've now included it in the setup wizard itself, so we can request it directly from our licensing service. Please keep in mind that you can only request a license key once per environment, but if you try it again, you will retrieve the same license key as before. So if for some reason the license key is not available anymore and you've requested it earlier and requested again, you will get back the same license key. And if it's still the trial duration is still valid, then you can still use it. Or if you try to install it in another company in the same environment, you will also get the same license key back. So let's take a look at that. We'll go to the Business Central environment. And here we have our setup wizard. For this demo, I will be using the role center for the ApproveIT 365 manager. And if we go to the wizard, we see that we have a license key that we can enter. If we don't have that license key, then we can request one. The first time you do that, you will get a contact information card where we expect some information to know who requested the trial key. So let's change some information in this. And we have our license key directly back. If I were to remove this and try it again, since we already requested from this environment, we will get it directly back without the need to enter the contact details once again. I will keep this setup wizard open for now. We will continue with that a little bit later. Well, no, let's actually close it and go back. We will see the setup wizards later on. With regards to the improvements in the latest release, Microsoft decided to change the naming conventions for what was previously the jobs. These are now called projects since BC24. And we have now also made that change to reflect that as well for BC24 and later in BC23. And earlier we will still call it jobs. But from BC24 and later, so also for the cloud environment, we will also call it projects and project documents. And that will be reflected in both the setup and the role center and all links to the project documents. Next, we have an option to add multiple attachments. However, in a previous release, this was limited to one additional attachment, and that's now changed, so we can actually send multiple attachments. With ApproveIT, we always send the report that we generate as the primary attachment. So, for instance, for the sales quote, we have the sales quote report. But we can also include some static documents like PDFs. That depends, of course, on the configuration. And that's the configuration that we can do from the ApproveIT setup. And here we go to the report email setup. And here we can specify configuration, where we can specify different configurations for each report in combination with the language ID. You see some options where we have the sales quote, but we also have a different configuration for the sales quote specifically for Dutch, which means that this sales quote configuration will be used for everything but the Dutch language, because we haven't specified any language. And in these configurations, you can configure whether or not you are allowed to add additional documents. Currently, this is enabled for this configuration that we'll be using during this demo. And that will allow us during the sending process to add additional documents. So if we take a look at how that looks like, let's go to the sales quotes. And here we have a regular sales quote where we can start the ApproveIT process from the Approve 365 menu. First of all, the report is generated, and then we select a recipient. In this, we get the default contact from the document. However, we can, of course, also check other contacts for that same customer, or we can simply change an email ourselves. We always need one signer, so the first recipient that's added will automatically be a signer. However, we can add multiple, and in this case, we also have the DocuSign tabs that will show a bit later on, which is also automatically assigned because we've specified that in the report email setup. Next up is the edit of the email. That was also part of the report email setup, where we can choose if it's allowed to edit the email or if we just want the standard text. This is only visible if that option for edit email is enabled, where we can change the email subject and the body. For now, we leave it as is. And then we get the part with the documents, where we can add multiple documents from files. So let's say, for instance, we add this file, we can add multiple. And each one can also have their own DocuSign tab sets if we want to allow different fields to be interacted with in the DocuSign portal. For now, I will leave them blank. And then the document is sent. So now we have added 2 additional documents. For the signer in DocuSign, it will seem as if it's one document at all where they need to sign. The document that we get back is also the combined document for both the report, in this case the sales quote report, and the added documents as well. So let's actually take a look at what we have right now. So this is the email that was sent to the signer. And here we can review documents. Here, and this is where the standard DocuSign portal is displayed, where we will be introduced with this pop-up, which also contains the email text, and the document itself with all pages, in this case also the EULA, and we can see some fields where we need to sign as well. Let's actually finish this one. We have a couple to choose from. First time that signers sign which DocuSign, they can choose a style. The second time they use it, it will be saved. So let's pick style, although you can still change it, of course. So now you can see we have an initial over there. We have the signature over here. We have our full name. That's a read-only field. We also have the date for the signing. And we have the job title, which is an editable field. Let's finish this real quick. And let's go back to here. So when we sent the DocuSign request, we updated the status to send. We can see who initiated and when it was sent. Normally, we also have a job queue entry available where we can regularly update the statuses for all open signing requests. However, we can also manually get the status back. And if we do that, we will see that it's completed. And we will also have the attachments with the signed document, where we can see all the fields that we just interacted with. One other change that we introduced that was partially already there, but didn't completely use the standard expiration and reminders is that we can now also add a custom expiration date. And if we don't use that, it will fall back to the default if we have configured that in the DocuSign portal. But if we allow the senders, so in this case ApproveIT, to override account defaults, then we can send a specific reminder for our request, or signing request. So let's actually take a look at that as well. And for that, we actually go to our DocuSign portal first. So here we can set up some standard configuration. So in the admin menu, we have a configuration for expirations and reminders. If we scroll down a bit under the signing and sending, we have reminders and expiration. And here you can see those settings that we just saw in the screenshots in the PowerPoint. So here we have the option allow senders to override account defaults. That's important if you want to send custom expiration dates. And we have a part for the reminders. that you can enable. So in this case, we have the first reminder after 7 days with an interval of 7 days. So every week a reminder will be sent, and with a standard expiration date for 30 days with a warning 5 days before it expires. And for ApproveIT, for the custom expiration date, we will be focusing on this one part, the 30 days. So if we check this one, this is one that was already sent, but I've enabled some options that allows us to resend the document as well, with the confirmation that it's already started. So yes, that's okay. This is also okay. I will leave the email as is, and I won't add any additional documents this time. What I've done right here, I haven't actually changed it, but the due date is already in a few days. So currently this quote is only available for a couple of days. And the reason that I did that is because in the DocuSign portal, we have a few where we can easily see all documents that expire within the coming 6 days. So here, once again, we are in our DocuSign portal from the sender. And in the agreements, we can see which documents are currently sent and what the status is. Normally, we don't have to take a look at this because we can also see this part in ApproveIT. But just to clarify that, first of all, we have our sent documents. And here we can see this is the one that we just sent a minute ago, and we can see that it's expiring soon. And we can also see that it expires in a couple of days. And that's something that we can also see, and that's the reason why I actually did it, because there's a several few here with expiring soon as well. So we can track those as well. That's it for the new features. However, I would like to go through the regular process and some configuration options that we have for this session as well. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please let us know in the questions tab, so we can hopefully answer you as quickly as possible. First, let's actually start with the initial configuration, because we saw a part of a flow already. But let's actually take a look at what is required with the setup wizard. So as before, we have our license key. And here we need to link to DocuSign. In this environment, we already have it linked. But for that, we need a couple of things. First of all, we need to know if we're linking to an acceptance or production environment. Keep in mind, this is the DocuSign environment type. So, and the reason that's important is because DocuSign has different URLs for their production and their acceptance or the demo environment. For this, we are in the acceptance environment because that's also where we are here. And you can actually see in the URL that's apps -d, and the D is for demo. And we can also see if we follow these links here that we have the production here, account.docusign.com, and here we have account -d.docusign.com. So once again, different URLs. So that's an important part. Next up, we need the account ID, and that can also be found in the DocuSign portal. If you go back to the admin menu, Then we will find a menu option here where we can retrieve that account ID. If we scroll down, we have integrations and we have apps and keys. And here we have the API account ID. To make it easy, we can simply copy it to the clipboard and fill it in. In this case, it's the same one. Now, in this case, we will get a message back that it's already linked, so the authentication was successful. However, let's actually go back one step and let's see how it looks at the first time. So we'll temporarily remove this. So I need to link it again. So here we are once again in the linking DocuSign step. Now we get another pop-up because we need somehow to authenticate. We need to know how to link it to the correct DocuSign account. So as mentioned here, if we click on yes, we will be redirected to the login page for DocuSign. Let's actually do it completely, so also log out over here. Next up, we need to enter our credentials, of course, for DocuSign, and then we get back an URL, and that part is important because we need to copy that. So let's click yes. Now we get redirected. Oh, it's already logged in. So normally you would get the login for the DocuSign portal and then log in, and then you get this page. What actually is visible on this page doesn't really matter. It can even be an error. In this case, it is the starting page for an IIS service. However, what is important is what we see over here. But instead of just copying that code, we just copy the complete URL. And we can enter that over here. And then once again, the authentication is successful. After that is done, we can add some standard options. So for instance, we have the standard emailing options with the subject and body. And we can specify which how ApproveIT should handle in certain document for certain document types. So for instance, we have the sales documents over here, which includes the sales quotes, orders, invoices, basically all unposted sales documents, where we can specify what the default behavior is before. For instance, if we allow the restart, if we don't allow that, then you can't just do what I just did if a document is already sent. And then we can just send it again. We need to void it first before we try it again. But since this was enabled, I could just restart with that confirmation dialog. Then we have the option to specify if we are allowed to release signed documents only. So only if the ApproveIT status is set to completed, we can release documents. If we don't do that and we have sent the document through DocuSign, then we can't release the document. And the other part of this is that if we have a completed signing request, that we can automatically release signed documents. And the last part that we have here is also the option to convert the quote to an order when the signing is completed. For now, these are disabled. We also have some default anchor strings. That is something that we'll show a bit later on in combination with the DocuSign tab sets. Now, depending on what kind of key you have, you might get some additional configuration options. For instance, if you have a trial key, we include all modules. So those are the modules for the purchase documents, the service documents, and the projects. So if we go here, we should see the purchase documents. Pretty much same options that we have available. Same goes for the service documents. The only difference is when we get to the projects, since there is no release status for projects, it's just a project quote that we send out, and there's no conversion to another type of project document. That's it for the initial configuration. So with this, the setup wizard is completed. And we can also see all these options back in the setup. So once again, we have our DocuSign environment and link. We have our license key, and we have the options for each document type or for each flow. And the standard email and text. From here, we can go also to the ApproveIT users. So since we completed the setup wizard, we have linked the account with which we completed the setup. And that's linked to a DocuSign account. If you want to use different sender email addresses that you need to have multiple users in your DocuSign account, and then you can link different users to different accounts. However, if you just need one sending email address, you can simply leave it like this. Because we have a default address, so even if there is no configuration for specific users, as long as we have a valid default user, we can use this to connect to DocuSign. Here in the configuration, we have a couple of options. The one that we already saw was the report email setup, where we can specify a couple part of this configuration for specific reports and languages. So for instance, if we go back to the sales quote with no language specified, we have those options to allow editing in the email, adding documents. We also have an option to save the document on the signer party. So for instance, if we have the sales quote, we have the customer, so we can also create a link to the attachment on the customer and not just on the sales quote. And we have the default tab set that we just used as well. And here we also see the email subject and body, just as we had with the initial setup for ApproveIT. However, we can of course specify it for this specific report. So here the text is also mentioning the sales quote. And here we can also use some variables. So here you see some substitution variables with the percentage sign. So we have two variables, 1 and 2, and 1 is used a couple of times. And we can specify those over here, where we link them to the table fields that belong to that document. So in this case, we have the document number and the bill to contact, and that's the name for the bill to contact. The way this works is we check a couple of steps. First of all, we check based on the document and the language used for the document. That's related, of course, to the customer or the vendor. We check for configuration with the specific report ID and language. If we can't find that, we fall back to the report without the language. And we can't find that, we fall back to a configuration with no specific report and no language. And if we really don't find anything, we will fall back for the email text to the original setup. But this allows you to configure specific cases for specific languages if you have customers in multiple languages or multiple countries. But don't need to specify every country. So for instance, in our case, we usually have some Dutch text for Dutch partners and customers, and everybody else gets an English configuration, so English text in the email and in the report as well. Regarding those DocuSign tab sets, those specify the fields that we use in DocuSign where the user can interact or that are placed during the signing request. So if we look at the sales quote, for instance, we can see that there are 5 tabs or 5 fields linked to it. And we can see that we have a couple of tab types available. So these are tab types that DocuSign supports. So we have the sign here tab, that is the signature. We have the full name, the job title, the date for the signing, and the initials. Some of these will be read-only, some of these will be interactive. So for instance, the date signed and the full name are read-only. Next, we decide where to place them. We have 2 options for this, anchor or fixed. In most cases, anchor makes the most sense because we have reports with a flexible or variable layout where we don't know exactly where on the page something will end up, especially if we use standard reports from Business Central, because, for instance, we don't know how many lines there will be, so we don't know where the footer text or the header text will end up exactly and how many pages it will be. So instead, we can anchor it to a specific string. And here we look for actual text within the document. So if we look at this, we see signed and approved and name/title and sales quote. Let's actually go back to one of the signed documents. I have a completed document available over here. And then it would be great if the document actually is visible. Let's do that a bit differently this time. Let's actually just use the DocuSign portal. So what we saw before, we had signed and approved. That's just text that exists in the sales quote report. And we had the name and title, or name/title. That's also part of the standard text in the document. So those text will be used as anchors for the variable fields for those those DocuSign tabs. Since we use the anchor, we can specify not only which anchor string to use, but also where to place it relative to that anchor string. So we have a couple of anchor units. Standard is using pixels, and we can specify the X and Y offset from that anchor string. So in this case, we have the X with minus 65 and with Y 430. So we will see that based on the sign approved, we have actually the starting horizontally a bit before that, and we have a vertical offset, the Y offset also, so it is below that sign approved. Same for all the others. We can see some same values to align some of the fields. And then we have some options available as well in the way that the fields are displayed. So we can use different fonts. These are the fonts that are supported by DocuSign. And we can also specify a font color. These are also the colors that are available in DocuSign. And we can specify a style, so bold, italic, and an underline. As you can see, we have some of these options selected. So we can see the blue over here. We can see the italic over here, and we can see the bold text as well. Linked to this, we also have an option over here to use translations. So for these anchor strings, we can also create translations without needing to specify a completely different set for each language. However, it is of course possible that we use the same tab set for multiple languages. So in that case, we might want to introduce translations where we translate the anchor string to a specific language so that we can support multiple languages with the same tab set. If we use tab sets, that also means that we don't use these defaults at all. These are only used when we don't have any tab sets available or no specific configuration for reports for the anchor strings. So this is also, once again, a fallback if you don't have any additional configuration. Now, with that knowledge, let's actually take a look at the processes that we can do. In this case, we have sent one and completed one here. We will reuse this one. So we can start the approve flow. In this case, we have already started it. So let's actually void it. So here we can also cancel the request through DocuSign. We give in a void reason. Please keep in mind that this reason will also be visible for the signer. And now we can see that the state is voided. And from here we can adjust some things in the quote and resend again or send to other people as well. And now we can send again. We can, as I mentioned, we can add multiple signers or recipients. If we don't specify the signer, that means it will just be a viewer. Meaning they can't interact with those DocuSign tabs or those DocuSign fields, but they can see when somebody else has signed the document. This also means that we don't specify the DocuSign tabs because that there are no specific tabs for this person to interact with. We can also allow this person to also sign. In that case, we, for instance, would have a different tab set to not overlap the fields. One example that we use ourselves are our partner agreements, where we have a signer for the partner and a signer for our own internal sales, where both parties need to sign. Please keep in mind that when we have multiple signers, that they will be processed in order. So if we have these two signers, this recipient will get the document first in the email to sign. And once that person is done with signing, then the second person gets the email to get their signing request. And only when everybody is done with signing, the document is considered completed. For now, I will leave it as a viewer. Here we have the default text. Here you can see that the substitution variables are already converted to actual values. So here we could change something. For now, I will leave it just as is. And the same with the attachments. I will just close that. So now the quote is sent. Once again, we can see it was sent just under a minute ago. And I should receive an email shortly. So this seems like I opened the link for the viewer. You can see also the status in process, but we can't do anything here. We can just see it, nothing else. We can just close it, but we can see what is in the quote itself. Then I should also have the email for the actual signing. Yeah, and here, of course, we have our pop-up. And we can start our flow. We can click on the fields, or we can let DocuSign guide us through which fields should be interacted with. So if we click start, we can see it stops at the first field that is available, in this case an initial. Now we have our signature. We do have our title. However, since I used this before, it's already filled in. I could change it. And the initials are actually repeating on each page due to the anchor string that we used. So if we refer to the sales quote, that's actually also in this case the title of the document that's shown on each page. So in this case, we've added that initial field once, but it will find every occurrence for that sales quote text, which means we now have a field that we can reuse on each page to allow the signers to mark each page with their initials. And when we have completed all fields, DocuSign will let us know that we're ready to finish. So let's finish. In this case, we'll get a pop-up, and I don't really want to log in. That doesn't really matter. We have completed everything that we need to in our DocuSign portal session. And once again, we can go back to the document. If you get the status back, then we will see it's completed, and we have the document attached as well. We can even look up the log as well, where we can see all actions from DocuSign. So we can see when it was registered in DocuSign, so when we send it, also the status there and the person that did that. So in this case, the Business Central user, or actually the DocuSign account that's linked to the Business Central user. You can see that we have two people where it was sent to, and when it was opened, when it was viewed, when it was signed, and when the printable copies were delivered by email. And in this case, also when the printable copy was delivered by downloading it into Business Central. Once again, to double check, we can see the quote over here. And we can see all signed fields as well. Now, to be clear, I've used the sales quote in this demo, but the same goes for every other document type that we support. So if we actually take a look at the purchase order, we will see that we have the same menu options available over here. If we go to the Approved 365 menu, we see that we have the same options available where we can start the flow. And once we start the flow, we can also check the status, void the documents, open the log, And we can also see the current status over here. And of course, the same goes for service documents and the project. One additional thing that might also be useful to know, if we go to the customers, we can also see the status for open documents, or for documents that we've handled with ApproveIT for the customer. So here we can see that we've used sales documents for this customer. We have 2 completed requests. So here you can go directly through to those documents as well. If we go back to the role center, we can see that we also have them here. We can also see here if there are any issues, if there are any voided documents left, if there are any declined documents. In theory, a signer can also decline it in the DocuSign portal, or if there are any other actions that are needed. And we can also see an overview of the log. That is something that we can also check separately, where we can check for all communication with DocuSign. If we really need to know what happened, if there was an error, for instance, we can find it back over here. If you want to know more about the configuration, about the process, we also have our help link, as always, that links to our Confluence page for ApproveIT, where you can review our functionality as well. And one thing left to actually show, this is something that's actually automatically created when we process the setup wizard. We also have our job queue entry. So this job queue entry is responsible for updating the status. Normally I would set this to 15 or 20 minutes, something like that, to make sure that we get regular updates for our documents, so we know when something was signed, so we can get all the documents back automatically without any interaction where we need to manually update the status. That will be it for this session. If there are any questions, of course, please feel free to ask them in the questions tab. However, if you later on have some questions, you can, of course, also contact our sales team at sales@idyn.nl. So I hope you have a good day. Thank you for joining us.